morning of this person, and I thought he's the Jimmy Swaggart to the youth, Larry Norman. Okay, men, you're on. This is called the hot seat. What mic am I using for my roving mic? Is it this one over here? Which is the roving mic, and which one do the men get? Can I have somebody help me out? This is Garrett. Who is this guy? I really love Larry. I've got his old original records, and I've been following him for many years. I don't know, how many years have you been in singing ministry? Somebody asked me that. What? 30. When you were like this big, right? When you were 9. I know how old you are now, eh? I think you're the same age as me almost. That's why I've been following you. Okay, I've got a question. I had several questions actually given to me already. The first one. You got another mic for Larry coming yet too? There's supposed to be, is that one? Can we get that one? Okay. Men, if you look at a woman and she is dressed sensually, whether it's a bikini or just a suggestive outfit or whatever. You know, everyone has their own sort of thing that they think is sexual. What thoughts come into your mind? Garrett, we'll start with you.
I think Larry should handle this one first.
I'd like it if we moved up here because I can't see all your faces. I know that some of you are so busy leaning like this is kind of bad for your spine. Come up here. There's a chair over there.
Garrett, 6'4.5". I don't think you can get up there. Yes, you can. That's great. I'm glad I don't have to get up there. No. Okay, Garrett.
Oh, he wants me to answer.
You want to answer first, okay.
You want to answer? If somebody's walking, it tells me a lot more about the personality than if they're just standing still. If somebody's talking, it tells you more about the personality than if they're silent. So it doesn't matter if somebody had a bikini on, or an evening gown, or something that their mother bought for them.
Gotcha.
I think as you get older, you discover that it's not how cute you think a person looks, it's how mixed up they're inside that's going to determine what kind of relationship you have with them and how messed up that relationship is. So it becomes a practical matter to try to not enter into a relationship with somebody because they're talented or you like their music or they have a cute nose or they're a cute girl or something, because you're going to pay for every relationship you have. Let's just go to your family first. If your dad is kind of difficult to get along with, there's some wear and tear on your heart as you're growing up. It's difficult to, you might want to stay home, but at the age of 17 you can't. You just got to get out of the house. Your dad is driving me crazy. So let's just, I'm not trying to pin it on parents, because I'm not a parent, but let's say that kind of relationship you already understand. A difficult relationship is no fun. It doesn't matter how well admired your father may be in the community. It doesn't matter how many people walk up to you and say, boy, your dad is a great guy. If you don't get along with him, you don't share their enthusiasm for the relationship. And you should, and you will, learn this about other relationships. It's no fun working for a boss that seems to think he's the most powerful man in your universe, and he can push you around, and he can, instead of saying, would you get the Xerox, you say, get the Xerox. And he's talking to you like, I'm the boss, you're the slave. So any relationship you have with a girl or a guy is going to be the same. Some guys are really mixed up. Some girls are very mixed up. You won't enjoy the relationship if it's a destructive one. So what, of course, I'm not talking as an 18-year-old. When I was 18, I didn't know much about the dynamic of the human personality and how it affects each relationship, each situation. But now, if a girl walks up in a bikini, the first thing I look at is not her legs. The first thing I'm looking at, if she's coming up to talk to me, I look at her age. I see how old she is. Is she 13? Okay, no, I'm just talking from if I'm at camp. She probably doesn't. She probably wants to say hello or wants an autograph. I'm going to hurt her feelings because I don't sign autographs. But I'll ask her name, and you know, it can be more personal. And if she's intelligent, I'll ask her what she's interested in. And if all she wanted was my autograph, and she's not really, doesn't want to talk, she just wanted to get an autograph like it was a goal. And she wanted to take the autograph back to home and show people that she talked to me. The truth is she didn't talk to me, she just asked for my autograph. I'm willing to talk to people but not give them an autograph. So that's one of the first things I think of is how old is this person? If she's 40 or 50, I think, okay, this is probably somebody's mother. I doubt that if she's 50 years old, she bought one of my records, but she might want to say, you've had a good influence on my son, I really appreciate it. Or my daughter has really calmed down because of your albums. I don't know how. I don't like them personally, but Now, if an absolutely beautiful girl walks up in a bikini, I'll also notice that. I'll go, well, this girl shouldn't be wearing a bikini. This girl is absolutely, you know, if a real skinny girl who's 12 years old wears a bikini, it doesn't seem to get much notice, does it? But if somebody's really attractive and is wearing a bathing suit, it doesn't always bring out lust in every man. See, not every man, I'll tell you some of these, to some of these girls, not every man is interested in sex. But let's define sex. Okay, let me say not every man is interested in intercourse as a priority in his mind. Sex is more than two bodies together. Sex, as God has given it to us, is also the personality. Because well, let's say none of you are married right now, but if you marry a person that has an unsharing and an ungiving attitude, your experience in the matter of intercourse will be very different than if you marry somebody who's very ready to share their emotions with you and love you. If you marry another kind of person who, if you had an argument that week, then you're out of luck, that's a different kind of relationship than a person who is always ready to forgive and is very compassionate and loving. So not every man and not every woman is interested in the act of conjugation. Some people open up emotionally. If you're a good husband, if you not only provide a stable lifestyle, and that means enough money to pay the rent and enough love to cover the wounds of the day, your wife will be much more interested in expressing her love in a physical way than if you're kind of lazy and you want to be in music and so you quit your job because he can't talk to me like that. I ain't nobody's gopher. You know, that's not going to increase the amount of confidence your wife has in you. Also, if you're really always nagging, like, I didn't say I'd do that. Well, I asked you last week if you do it, and you know, you said you do. Well, why can't you do something? You know, why do I have to do everything? If you're always arguing like that, don't expect to have romantic feelings an hour later. Now, there's another level that maybe we'll go to later, but I'll just mention it now so maybe I'll remember it. Because people don't usually deal with this in terms of sex. Sex, or intercourse, is used to express many things. Sometimes power. Some people want control over other people, and they use sexuality as a dominating force. Some people are grateful, and they use sexuality in a wrong way to, you know, a girl who's very insecure might end up going to bed with different guys because they talked to her or they were nice to her, and she isn't really that interested in sex because she hasn't yet brought it into a perspective where she understands what it is. But if they want her, well, gosh, you know, they've been so nice to her, and this is what guys like, so, okay, that's fine. So sexuality or intercourse is not one thing. It can be many things. And what we as Christians need to discover is, What is it to God? What is it for? And I'm sure we'll get to that later.
Garrett, do you want to answer that question? In the meantime, someone get their hand ready and I'll get over here with the microphone.
If I meet a girl coming towards me or a woman coming towards me in a bikini, the very first thing that I do is I make a decision, and that decision is, do I like it or don't I? Now, part of that is because I've been trained for many years as a fine artist. I spent hours and hours and hours a week for over 4 years drawing the human body. So I've been given a unique appreciation of the creative work that God has done in the human body. The thing that I see first and most is when in the way people dress, it's the first opportunity they have to make a statement about themselves. If you want to enter into any relationship whatsoever, the very first thing, the very first connecting thought or connecting link you have in a potential relationship is the way you look. So I have to ask myself, what is this person trying to say? And I think that is often then a reflection of what the person is really like on the inside. If there's not a whole lot to say on the inside, then on the outside it becomes threadbare too. If there's a whole lot to say on the inside, then the outside usually reflects that. And I'm very much trying to bring Scripture into it. The Scripture says, let your outside be a reflection of your inside. I'm not against bikinis. But the thing is that I think we really need to allow that to work in ourselves. If the way you feel the inside, let that express itself on the outside, because it is the very first step that you take towards making a relationship or connecting with someone. And you don't always have the chance to really dress like a dog and come up to somebody saying, hi, I'm a really nice person inside. It doesn't work that way because everyone is looking at you. Everyone is also making the same decisions I do, or I like or I don't like. So your desire is to at least let your first impression be a favorable one. So I think from a sexuality standpoint of view, I quickly dismiss it as simply, okay, it's a nice looking body in a bikini. But then it goes deeper, because we as Christians are also called to discern what the need of that person is. If they are making a statement, like screaming from inside, saying, please look at me, I'll do anything to get you to look at me. I'll wear the absolute minimum that is required under the law to get you to look at me. I think we have to reach out to them and say, what is it they're really saying? So,
something happened? Okay, that is really excellent. I'd like to hear that from a man's perspective on that. You know, something that I just learned the other day, and Garrett, you will back this one up, is that, you know, we see all these gorgeous people in the magazines, the media, the whole thing. I have learned that a lot of that's just airbrushing. They take that person and take every little flaw out. They take a big overweight person and make them something. And all they've done is they've done an airbrush. A woman that does a lot of the work for to get the models ready, had this woman that she had to get ready with makeup for a bathing suit modeling, and they had chosen this particular woman. The problem is with this woman that she had freckles all over her body. But guess what? When the pictures were put in the magazines, there wasn't one freckle. So, you know, we've got this horrible image up there of what we've got to become. But that's the fantasy world. That's not the reality. We're all here, and look at us. Next question.
I was wondering, both of you gentlemen have done a lot of traveling, being in the music business, and I was wondering what you thought of whether a long-distance relationship would work out, say if the person lived 300 to 500 miles away or whatever.
Good question. Larry, I guess that one's for you.
Well, I haven't really had a long-distance relationship that I was separated by so many miles that my wife and I wrote letters. I was over in England and she was over here in America when we first started kind of testing each other to see if we met other requirements, like how intellectual is this person, how can they put their ideas together. And I was living over in England, so that's, I guess, a long-distance relationship, but it wasn't like I was working at a job and she was working at a job, and to get together, one of us would have to uproot our whole career and leave our house and leave our animals or bring the animal. So it's different because I could move back to America. So you're asking not a conceptual question. You're probably asking about your own life. Do you have somebody you're interested in a long-distance relationship? I think long-distance relationships are kind of interesting in one way because you will not be able to develop the physical side of it faster than the intellectual side of it. So it's kind of a margin of safety for you. On the other hand, it's not fair to marry somebody because they write good letters.
Well, now, Garrett, you're a communicator. How would you handle that?
When I first met my wife, before we married, I lived in the thriving metropolis of Wallaceburg, Ontario. And my wife lived in Toronto, and I already put into practice a very old rule of marketing. The further you get away from your objective or your market, in this case my wife, and I don't think of my wife as a market, by the way, the greater you have to increase your frequency. So what I did was, I wrote her every day, and I employed all the skills I had, including my artistic talents, decorated the envelopes. And the reason I did that was I wanted to secure mail delivery, and I became so good at decorating those envelopes that the mailman got curious about my wife. He was considerably older, so don't let your thoughts run away with you. And he came up to the house one day and just wanted to meet this woman, this girl, who was getting all this fancy decorated mail. And so he met Alice, and she said later to me, she says, "But those kind of letters coming that often and that frequently, I had no choice but to say yes." So long distance can be overcome, yes.
Garrett is happily married with the 6th child on the way. And he's got some of his teenagers here, right? A teenager? How many you got here?
2 of them.
2 teenagers there, boy and girl, right? Okay. And anyone got another question? Listen, while they're answering the questions, signal to me you want me to come over there, okay? Very quick question while I'm working my way through there. Can you explain, this question that came in, what is bondage in a relationship?
Lording it over someone else. I think anything that you do to keep someone else in submission for the simple sake of getting what you want is bondage.
I'm going to put on my sunglasses so no one recognizes me for this question. Okay. My mom says that a couple from 2 different cultures, she warns me about that because things don't really click, you know? It takes a while to get used to the cooking and stuff, you know? Because I'm an Italian and she's seen a lot of mixed up relationships, you know? Yeah, that didn't work out.
Who wants to answer that one?
I think statistically, mixed relationships are less likely to work, but this has nothing to do with God. As Christians, the drawbacks don't have to do with your parentage or your heritage, but with your personality. Let's say, and let's just go to the extremes, let's say you were raised in the Catholic Church. Let's say the one that you're interested in, the girl that you're thinking you're in love with, is not been raised in the Catholic Church. Okay, you're no longer a Catholic. And but I'm assuming we're talking about you and somebody else. We're not talking theory here. Okay. Just because you're no longer a Catholic and now you're a Christian, and I'm supposing your girlfriend is a Christian because otherwise you probably would be unwise to be falling in love with somebody who couldn't share a level beyond this earthly plane and appreciate, you know, the realm of God. Just because you're no longer a Catholic doesn't mean that some of the Catholic hasn't remained in you. If your wife has a very, your future wife has a very secure relationship with God based on her understanding of forgiveness, and yet you, having become a Christian, still feel that this judgmental God exists, even though you no longer give your prayers to Mary, that perhaps you still, and you no longer think that if you do some certain sin before you get to confession, then you have to go to hell because you didn't make it to the priest in time. Somehow the fear of judgment might still remain with you, so that your relationship might differ in that area. Now that's not a small area. one person believes in forgiveness, the other person believes in judgment. Your wife might be more willing to forgive you over matters, little matters, like you might be a slob around the house, not pick up your shirt, leave your socks on the floor, and she might go, well, I love him, it's okay. It's like having children. They're not perfect, my husband's not perfect, I'm not perfect. But you might go, I have to be perfect before God. I have to be, oh, I'm such a slob too, and oh, okay, and my wife, she didn't wash the dishes last night. I can't believe I got it for breakfast. You might be unforgiving. So this might cause a real tension, and it might come from your view of who God is. So your mother is not fully correct. It's not the truth that people from two different cultural backgrounds can't have any successful marriage. It's not the truth, but it is true very often that this happens because of the color of their emotions. It doesn't ensure a good marriage for two Swedes to marry each other or for two Italians to marry each other. You know, maybe two Italians will really fight it out because in an Italian family, there's nothing negative about yelling at each other and always saying, you're crazy, you're out of your mind. You know?
You know, on the area, I always thought in the Bible when it says being equally yoked, it meant that you had to marry a Christian. Well, going through marriage and relationships that I have discovered it means equal yoking in your similarities. It may be your intellect. It may be your goals in life. You know, what if one's called the mission field and one's called to be here? You know, like there has to be an equal yoking on the major areas of your life. And that's why it's important to focus on communication before sexuality as your priority, because then you may find out a lot more about the person. I could have fallen in love maybe many times, but boy, they were going one way and I was going the other, and we weren't equally yoked. So I didn't fall in love.
Well, we should love a lot of people in life. We shouldn't marry them all.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. There you're great, right. Okay, next question.
How mature do you have to be in Christ before you get into a relationship? Is there a certain maturity you have to have? 17, 18, 19 years old, you know, your baby in Christ. Is that...
Okay, Garrett, your turn.
I don't think you have to be a graduate of seminary to enter into any relationship. I think that with a relationship that you desire to found in Christ, the greatest decision you can make in the relationship is to determine to grow together, side by side in the relationship, and not have one stop growing and the other one go ahead or go off on different tangents. And I think that you need very much to get that kind of a quality decision into your relationship. Say, let's study the Word together. Let's discuss the Word together. Let's see what it means to us together. Let's see what it means to us individually. And then make that decision to grow together side by side, so that as you mature, you also mature together. So in that sense, you can start relatively young in the Lord, but then you need to grow together in the Lord, not one ahead of the other.
Also, not every relationship that has love at the core of it has to be a marriage relationship. If you're 16 years old, you can really be in love with somebody, but you don't have to have sex with them, and you don't have to marry them, and you don't have to even kiss them. I always thought that a kiss was supposed to mean something, that if you met somebody and you really liked them, you didn't necessarily have to kiss them. This I'm going back to the 50s though, you know. And you could go out with somebody for a year, and if you kissed them, it was special. And it was all right to also not kiss somebody unless you wanted to marry them. But I had because I was a Christian when I was 5, I also felt that I had a lot of time to wait. My security wasn't in finding a girl and getting married, which is the seal of approval, like, okay, now my life is settled and now I'm home free, now everything's great. I had God for security. So my attitude toward people was more liberated. I had a sense of freedom, not desperation. If I met somebody and I talked to them for 5 minutes and I wasn't really interested in them and I didn't think I'd ever be interested in them, I didn't want to marry them, I wasn't interested in falling in love with them, then I wouldn't also ask them out. But a lot of, for instance, girls go out with guys that they're not interested in because, well, for some selfish reasons. It's a free meal. It's something to do. They got a car. It's a movie. Instead of staying home and watching TV, they can go see a movie, and instead of waiting for 5 or 6 years to come on the TV. And they're selfish. And if a girl ends up married to somebody she shouldn't be with, and then says, "Oh Lord, what is the situation I'm in?" You can very often trace serious mistakes in your life back to very stupid reasons, like he was cute. That's why I married him. Gosh, I married him because all my girlfriends thought, "Oh, Janie, you must be so happy. He is such a doll." Or, "Wow, you must be some woman to get a guy like that." And so some girls marry for self-image. Like, yeah, I'm really quite something to have attracted this slightly older boy who's got a great car and he's got a great stereo system. People get married for stupid reasons. Hopefully Christians don't need to go to that because God is there to whisper to us on the way to the altar.
Amen. Okay, next question.
I have two questions, but they both have the same background. I was engaged for quite a while and expecting to marry the person. We got into a fair amount of sex. That's the background. That's developed a lot of strong desires in me, and having since that time come into a relationship with Christ, I find I really have a tough time in two areas, and I'd like comments on them. One area is similar to the question that was first posed. I really find myself lusting after many females as they walk by in their string bikinis, whatever, and I find that a real problem. It really bothers me because I want to develop my walk with the Lord. And then the other area is an area that is much more private, but still relates, and that's in the area of masturbation. I find it very frustrating, and I don't feel like it's a good part of my life, and I want to get rid of it, but I find that very difficult.
How old are you? 22. 22? Okay.
I really appreciate that kind of honesty, and that's what I really believe the body of Christ is all about, being honest with one another. And I think if we start doing that, if we start being that honest with each other, we can start ministering onto one another in a very special way. Garrett, do you want to go first on this one? We're trying to take turns back and forth, so we probably have a few more questions. We've got to keep our answers fairly succinct because we also want to hear Larry play his guitar.
No, I'm going to do my own seminar later on. I'll play my guitar later on in my seminar.
In your seminar? Okay,
yeah,
this is so good.
Sex is a lot more important than music. In fact, this is the first question we've had about sex. All the rest have been about relationships. So this is the good stuff.
Exactly, right.
I think, first of all, a word of comfort. I don't think you're alone in that kind of a problem. Much of what happens with sex itself and the acts of sex come with a whole load of baggage, which is culture, which is tradition, which is taboos, and including masturbation. Masturbation is, and this is, hear me, this is my opinion, okay? I'm not advocating it, but this is my opinion. It's a means of releasing the body of some built-up emotion or tension, be it positive or negative. Now, added to that is a whole truckload of guilt and shame and everything else. And I think that's what you have to deal with, not with the act of masturbation. And I'll be very honest with you, what has encouraged me, even in my own sexual life, is a very simple mental exercise. And that is, can I picture Jesus Christ with me there when I make love to my wife? Can I picture Jesus Christ with me as I walk down the main field out there and see all those women pass me by? And I can do that, and sometimes that's a struggle. I may say, Jesus, could you just sort of like stay behind a little while? You see, I'll be back in 5 minutes. But then I discipline myself to do that because I know that's not right. And that's a tremendous comfort for me, you see, because I don't visualize Jesus with a baseball bat walking up behind me, clubbing me every time I step out of line. I visualize him as the minister that he was in his own ministry while he was on this earth. So I would encourage you to do the same thing. Okay, rather than giving you a verbatim black and white answer saying, okay, here's the book, page 65, it says it's right or wrong, you make the decision. I said, learn to picture Jesus Christ with you in the situations you're at, okay, with your lust as well, and let Him work that through you, and it actually works.
I think masturbation for most people comes from two directions. One is loneliness, but the other is fear. Fear of loneliness. And the inability to walk up to people and talk to them. So that your sexuality, instead of being something that you extend to the world, and I don't mean intercourse again, I'm talking about sexuality. Learning to do small talk with strangers is part of sexuality, part of your confidence. If some people, maybe every single person in this room might have masturbated, but some people didn't do it for very long. They just thought it didn't become part of their life. For others, it became a way of life. The more secretive you feel about your personality and your emotions, the more you're liable to be driven into a self-love, which is what masturbation is. It's bringing yourself to an erotic state, bringing yourself to some sense of satisfaction. Now, I don't think masturbation would be wrong for men, and I'm not talking about women. For men, it wouldn't be as wrong if it occurred only maybe once a month for a release of the bodily fluids that build up in the testicles. If it only happened once a month, let's say, and if there was no pornography involved or no fantasy involved. If it were merely a clinical release, I think they're called wet dreams when they happen when you're asleep. But it might be the weight of the blankets on you that also helps create the resistance, which is required in a sexual relationship with one another. But when you're awake, it takes on other repercussions, because usually for men, I don't believe it's a clinical thing. It might be when you're 10 years old. I think most of us discovered it and didn't know what it was, and thought we were the only person that ever did it, and thought if it happened in the dark that we broke it, and now it was bleeding because there was this blood in our hands, and we'd track it across the carpet into the bath, and then you find, and years later you find out what it is, and you go, oh, I did that, a long time. That's what it is? Oh, I knew it had something to do with sex. For most of us in a repressed society, and I'm not talking about the kind of magazines you can get at the grocery store, the information your parents withhold from you is what creates a repressed attitude towards sex. Masturbation is a mystery. You're not sure what it is, or if it's right or wrong, and if you have guilt about it, well, that probably is wrong, but then you might also transfer this guilt to sexuality of all kinds, think that sex is wrong. Like this, in the 50s, we finally got a TV. Okay, everybody else had one, we got one. We're watching TV and two people kiss on TV. My father turns off the TV. Okay, that's a message. I don't know what kind of message it is, but it's a message. Now, if very likely, since this was an old movie from the 40s, around that era, maybe they weren't married to each other. But for a young child, we're not sophisticated in the ramifications of a relationship. We just know that people either like each other or they don't like each other. Some people are nice, some people carry guns and violin cases. That's what the movies limit life to real accessible, superficial levels. But these people kiss, my dad turns off the TV. Okay, it's bad. But then my mom and dad kiss. Okay, it's bad, it's good. No, it must be good because they're good. They're my parents and they would never do anything bad, but it's bad if other people kiss. So I guess it would be bad if I kissed because I'm not my parents. You get totally confused in a suppressed environment. When there's not a lot of information coming across, you have to make up your own rules. I have a friend, he understood sex. I think he must have got it out of biology class because he thought, well, first of all, you're in love with somebody, and then you kiss them, and then, well, you take off your clothes, and then and then afterwards, he didn't even know what happened in the middle. He says, afterwards, like your legs are really in pain and you're paralyzed, you can't move. And he must have been thinking about the Black Widow spider or something. But if your parents don't talk to you, you're going to fill in the space yourself. You're going to try to understand sex according to your own observations and your own associations. So if masturbation were merely clinical or technical, it wouldn't be as wrong as it is for men because it's very fantasy-oriented. It's associated with pornography. Now, the reason that pornography is wrong is probably for two reasons. And it has something to do with even the ads for fingernails and clothes. Women see all these ads in magazines, not realizing that the woman who's got these beautiful hands and this red fingernail, they don't show the rest of her body. She's a hand model. Very few bathing suit models have nice hands. Some of them have very big. Cheryl Teagues has huge feet. Lauren Hutton has big feet. Well, they wouldn't do an ad, for nylons. but the photographer concentrates on their face. So some people are hand models, some people are feet models, some people are bathing suit models, some people aren't tall enough to wear a bathing suit. They would look short, even in a nice bathing suit. But you girls all you assemble all of these images and compare them to yourself, assuming that all of these women were born with it, the lucky things, not knowing that some of them are so neurotic and anorexic and they think, I've only got 5 years and then they're going to throw me out, you know. And that's true. Models are discarded very readily. So you're just thinking these girls are born with it and it's natural to them, and I think I'm too short and I'll never be tall. I mean, I can always lose weight, but I can't get tall, you know, unless I keep growing. So the same kind of thing, this self-destructive self-view that comes across, men do this with pornography. If any of you have gotten into it too far, you know that no longer is the image of the woman adequate. It's a composited image. It's this woman's nose, and this woman's face is so beautiful, and she looks so sweet. This woman here has great legs, but she looks kind of hard. I wouldn't like to go out with her. She'd probably be real critical of my driving and stuff. You know, you're compositing. And the problem with, and I think why pornography is so violent, it does violent to the sanctity of human relationships. You become aware of an objectivized perspective. What does my nose look like? What do my legs look like? I doubt if the Jews ran around saying, somebody invent the mirror so I can see how good looking I am. You know, they were worried about survival. They were worried about marrying the right woman so they'd have peace in their tent. So they'd have many children and a good relationship and peace. The Bible says in the Old Testament, it is better to live on the corner of the rooftop than in the house with a contentious woman. But in our society, we're not looking for ideals of a subtle nature. We're looking for, you know, guys who walk around with their shirts off up here a lot probably have defined bodies. Guys that keep their shirts on all the time probably don't. So it's not to the credit of somebody that they're walking around with their shirt off and they're real casual. They might be doing it not because they're hot, but because they're trying to advertise the fact that they're really together. And you know, you girls, you cover up what you consider your lesser physical qualities because you don't want to be criticized. And it's girls that criticize other girls more than men criticize girls. Men, if you got a good personality, you can have flabby thighs and guys don't notice that much, but try to get past the girl. Girls are really catty about everything. They notice everything.
It's very interesting in a study that was done on what a man was attracted to in a woman. The very bottom line of all the things that you would think, you know what the number one reason was? The person was at ease. And we have that as Christians because we have the peace of God. We have the radiance of Christ that can exude out of us. And we have a greater potential to be at ease than anyone else in society. And that's really what the attraction is all about. Garrett, do you have some more to answer? I think we have some more parts to answer on the question. Do you think we covered it all?
I just want to add to what Larry has said about the way we view ourselves and the way we work with it. I think there's a real underlying danger that is literally eating away all the underpinnings of young people's lives and everyone's lives in relationships and in sexuality, and that is, you know, the incredible power of mass media. Whereas television, I mean, Larry got one in the 50s, it was probably black and white, and we don't live there anymore now. And what happened was television was really an escape from a hard working life, and it was a moment of entertainment in your home. However, the medium became so powerful that now what was originally intended to be simply an escape or a fantasy, by sheer volume, is being projected on you as reality. So what you now see on television, what you now see in the magazines, what you read and what you hear is being projected onto you in such a volume and such a frequency that you're beginning to receive it as reality. So what you do is you compare yourself to that reality, and most people fail because you cannot live the lifestyles that are portrayed in the media. You cannot look the way the models do, because every model has an imperfection somewhere. As Larry said, some of the most beautiful women models have ugly feet, ugly hands.
Yeah, you can't just keep your shoes on. I mean, you think, oh, big deal, so they got ugly feet, I'd like to have her body. You know, I'd trade my nice feet and ugly body for her good-looking body and ugly feet. It's not, see, if he's an artist, and I don't know him, but if he's an artist, he becomes aware of the, if you're taking a drawing, You can change somebody's cheek line just a little bit and turn them into an average-looking person into looking like a Roman goddess-type statue. It's funny, but plastic surgeons have learned something awful, and that's that just by altering little tiny facets of your face and the way the light refracts upon it changes the way people view you. If you have dominant cheekbones, you seem to be more courageous and bold. But very courageous men are, I would say, men who are willing to die for their causes. And I don't think that Sakharov or other people who have stood up against communism and been in prison for it have high cheekbones, but they have real courage. I'd like to see Sylvester Stallone in the Stalag being beaten by the Russian captors for a little while. I'd like to see how brave he is when he doesn't have an editor and a cameraman and he wrote the script.
I agree with Al wholeheartedly, and I think I learned that myself, and I look back and I'm very blessed because I learned it that way. When I drew the human body, and I'm saying about 6 hours a week, the ugliest human body to draw is a perfect human body. And the most beautiful bodies to draw are what we in the fine art world call the bodies with character. You know, and that meant maybe a bit on the fat side, a bit on the lumpy side, a bit on the old side, a bit on the small side. And you sometimes think in an art college that the models are the derelicts of society. They're not. They're people of character. And it really helped me to see that when I look at people, when I look at myself in the mirror, I gave up years ago trying to lose weight. I look for the character. Now that's not an excuse. I don't want to look a mess. But still, I would much rather work on the character. I would much rather like to get to know the character of someone, and there's a key element in discovering someone's character, and that's time. And if anything television and mass media in the 20th century has done, it's taking away, or it's giving you watches with a 1-hour calendar on it. So you fall in love on Saturday, you have sex on Saturday night, you get married on Sunday morning, and you wonder why on Monday you're falling to pieces. So the whole character thing requires time. It takes me upwards of 10 to 15 hours to draw one human body, because it takes that length of time to discover character and to discover what a person is about. Because if I want to do it in 10 seconds, I just take the Polaroid, and all I get is just a quick view.
Yeah, I think the subtlety, one thing that he's touched upon is that the rapidity of experience on TV and the excitement of TV. No soldier of fortune has ever lived as fast as anyone on the A-team. You don't rescue people over the weekend. Sometimes it takes months of planning, and there's a risk involved. One of the heroes in your movies is very likely to get killed. Okay, let's just discard that image. Let's go to another image. No life is as happy as, I guess Happy Days is something you might have seen. No family is that homogenized, the Cunningham family, and no juvenile delinquent is as sweet as the Fonz. Okay, let's discard that image. One of the things that disappeared from my family when we had a TV was my family. And we didn't watch that much TV. We only watched one program a night. Because my parents thought, well, you know, we don't want this to get out of hand. They got to do schoolwork. But we used to talk. And when we got a TV, we didn't talk anymore. And I longed for my parents to talk to me. And it wasn't that they didn't love me anymore. It's that 1 hour, which might stretch to 2 if the conversation was really good, became 1 hour of sitting there watching TV. You know? And then, well, the credits roll up. Okay, kids, time to go to bed. You know, they expended the last bit of the energy of the day in letting the TV express its character, its personality. And I missed talking to my family. I think that TV has proved to be much more dangerous than communism. I think TV has proved to be much more insidious than any lie that Nixon might have told, or any government secrets that are only now being revealed because of the Freedom of Secrets Act. I think that television is terrible. About 25 years ago, I started saying this all the time because I only knew one thing. It had ruined my family conversation. And I was always talking against television. And people, especially, it seemed like the more Christian they were, thought I was just being, selectively negative. That I was just bantering on about something, and that I needed to become a more balanced person. But I hated TV because of what it did to my family. Now, some of you clapped. Nobody did 20, 25 years ago. Nobody. They just said I was negative. I need to get a better relationship with God. Now I have more proof that television is bad, not just because of what happened to my family. You guys are all bored. If you guys have TV and you really watch it, you have an element of boredom that's been bred in you for years. And you probably cannot sit in an empty room for 3 and 4 hours and enjoy yourself. And you probably cannot go out on a date without doing something. Let's go miniature golfing. Let's go to the movies. Hey, let's go out and eat. A lot of pounds have been gained in restaurants because people don't know really how to talk to one another. They have to do something while they're together.
As I was listening to you, I was thinking a definition of a lazy date is going to a movie.
It's like a way to be with somebody and not be with them at all.
You don't have to work at it. You don't have to work at a relationship. And then you see this wonderful relationship going on in the movie, and the movie's over, and then what you do, you got an hour, and you want one of those fast relationships like you saw in the movie. They don't work. So I like dinner dates, so I think they're wonderful, because I went out, when I had been a long time before I'd been out on a date, and I went out on a date and told my mom the next day, I don't know if I want to go out back into this dating world anymore. It's hard work. I'm exhausted. Well, what had happened, it was a person that I just met. We went out for dinner and we talked in the restaurant for like 6 or 7 hours. Like they closed the restaurant and asked us to leave almost. But it was great. I got to know somebody. And I don't like going to the movies except an exceptionally good movie, but I'd rather go by myself and spend my precious time with the person, getting to know who they are as a gift from God to me and how I can be a gift of God to them. There's a question here.
What Garrett said about art and the human form really struck a chord, because my husband and I both work with art in our business. And I see very few beautiful bodies in expensive pictures. I see them airbrushed on vans, but nowhere else. I see the less than beautiful bodies. And I think because an artist can see beauty in ugliness, and that's what comes across to the art patron. But if you see a beautiful body, nobody is able to get past the beautiful body and look in and see the beauty in that person. And if we as Christians could become artists and see the beauty in human form, there might be a few less problems.
But that's because we have made beauty a business, and a very profitable one. And so, the merchandising of beauty, the merchandising of the human body is worth billions and billions of dollars. And for that reason, we don't want to get people interested in wrinkle lines. You can't sell them.
I'll tell you some funny things that you don't know about models. Some of these girls, I'm just talking to you girls, some of the girls that are very beautiful, they have like really nice, their cheeks go in here, and they seem to be like that. Well, if you have a favorite model, and you follow her in every month's Vogue or something, or you see her in perfume ads and stuff, you almost never see her teeth. And one reason is, one way you get this beautiful look of, the sunken cheeks and the high cheekbones, is if your mouth, instead of being round like this, is more pointed, as a fish mouth is. It comes out more. I'm being real serious. Some of these girls, when they smile, it's like this. Their teeth, they have bucket teeth. That's why they have this poochy look on their lips. It's because I don't blame a lot of these models for being insecure, because they don't feel attractive, and yet they're being told you're beautiful, and they're going, I'm not. Society is sick if they think I'm beautiful. This is terrible. Elvis Presley lost respect for most of his audiences because he stopped really trying. When he was doing all of his Las Vegas shows, just in the last 10 years before he died, he had women running up and throwing their clothes on the stage, throwing, all kinds of things on the stage. And he knew, when I was at my best, when I really could sing before I was having problems with drugs and my weight, nobody really went this crazy. Now I'm doing terrible. I can't even remember the lyrics to my songs. He couldn't. He had a very bad memory from all the drugs. And yet he was being now worshipped, lauded, celebrated for being mediocre. And he lost respect for his audiences. He'd take one of his scarves off, which was now soaked with sweat. and he'd throw it out to the audience, and they'd fight over it, and they'd take it. And he would just, there was some footage when he died. I watched some of the footage on TV, and he'd be laughing at his audience because they were so silly, making fools of themselves over him. He lost respect for them because he knew that at his most mediocre, now he was really being celebrated. Elvis Presley made more money and became a bigger star, more universally in every country, by making those crummy movies. He made $1 million a picture. He hated the script. He was embarrassed about being in them, but he would, you know, he was making more money than when he turned the music world on its ear and was really doing what you might call good work. So he lost respect. A lot of models have lost respect for people because they're being idolized as being the example of beauty, and they feel that, you know, they're stupid buck teeth. I mean, you know, you can file your teeth down, you can do all kinds of things yourself, but they're comparing themselves also to a standard of beauty that was chosen by someone in business world. God didn't choose this standard and say this is beautiful. God says what is beautiful in the Bible, all through the Bible. There are examples of what a woman of God is, or a man of God, or what is beautiful in the eyes of God. So, I'm sorry, but if you want to have that great look, you're going to have to get real bad teeth.
Yeah, I think I'd like to just add, it made me think of a very close friend that I have, and her and her husband are still married, but she had a real problem. She could not get up in the morning without putting quote unquote on her face. And she lived in absolute terror, and I mean this really, she lived in terror of ever waking up when her husband was awake. So she would sneak out of bed in the morning, go to the bathroom, put on her face, and then go back to bed. And I think that we all fall for that. We want to look our best, so we put as much on as we can to look our best. And I like to meet people as they are. I prefer them dripping wet out of the shower, because that's when they look the best to me. Simply because that's when I'm looking. Or sleepy-eyed in the morning, but nevertheless, this is a personal statement, all right? I like makeup if I can't see it. I don't like makeup if I can. I used to detest being kissed by women that had thick red lipstick on their lips, especially when they smoked, and they would pull the cigarette away and the lips would stick to the white filter at the end of the cigarette and pull half the makeup off, and like that. Drove me nuts. Right? When I kiss lips, I want to kiss lips and not some greasy barrier in between. You know, but I think that's all part and parcel of an insecurity that we have, that we're afraid we're going to be rejected if we don't come across with the right image. I have nothing against highlighting yourself. I have nothing against a touch here and a touch there. Do the hair the way you want it. I have nothing against that at all, right? But don't let that be the sole thing that stands between you and the relationship, because one of these days they're going to catch you in the shower. One of these days you're going to wake up next to him or her. Okay, and that's reality. I love my wife and been married to her for almost 20 years. I have 6 children, and I love her in the morning, I love her in the evening, I love her out of the shower, in the shower, you know, makeup or no makeup. Simply because I have taken that time to get to know her and to establish a relationship that when she does put on makeup, hey, it's nice. It's a treat. So she's not a different person. And neither are you. You're nobody different, with or without makeup. You are yourself. Get to know yourself. Get to know who you are in Jesus Christ. And let that come out of you. You don't need makeup.
You know, Garrett, you know this already, but I am a colors consultant and a makeup artist. But you know what's really interesting?
Quit your job. You're not supposed to have that kind of job.
You can be delivered
this is not a promotion, but I'm going to confirm what you're saying. I like the natural look. And one of the reasons I have grown to like it even more is I've heard from men that say they like the natural look. They don't mind a little bit of makeup, but they like it done naturally, so the real person shows through. And I would like to ask the men here, on behalf of all of us women, how many men here would prefer the natural makeup look so the real person comes through?
Let me add something to that for those fellows who wear glasses. There's nothing worse than wearing glasses and kissing a woman with a lot of makeup, and when you part, you can't see anymore. I am forever looking for Kleenex to wipe off the grease of my glasses. And then people get wonder why I do what I do. All right, just a little caution. Promote the natural look if you wear glasses.
The reason I brought that up, I've had many men tell me that tell the women we like them with not too much makeup. And I don't think too many will see me without any on, but a little bit makes it, that just enhances what's there. It's really nice. Little tap will do you, right on. Okay, we have another question over here, and there's several other with questions. Wave at me if you have a question you want to ask while they're talking, so I have time to get around and over there, okay?
I'd like to give you an example and find out your opinion about this. But two good friends of mine were living together for about 3 years, became Christians, lived together for 6 months after that, stopped having sex, continued to live together. Then they separated, got engaged, had different apartments, but still slept together. Not having sex, stark naked, doing a lot of other things. They really enjoyed cuddling and caressing each other. So I would like to know what they got married, they're happily married now, they've been married for a couple of years, and they know each other really well. But I'd like to know what you consider going too far, and what happens when you really love somebody and you enjoy being close to them and say you're going to get married. In your opinion, because the Bible says if it's in your heart, then you've already done it, right? So does that, no?
Wait, finish your question.
Well, would that include like desiring to make love to, say, your future husband if you were engaged? Would that be considered like fornicating or something like that?
I don't think what the Bible meant, and I've heard Billy Graham even speak on this, so it's also what I thought. If you have lust for a woman in your heart, it's not the same thing as committing adultery or fornication in the flesh. Committing, just to go back to the base, committing adultery in your heart is not the same thing as committing adultery in the flesh. Because if you do it in your heart, the other person's not involved. They may not even know how you feel about them. Okay, I don't think it's right to commit anything in your spirit. But for Christ to say what he said doesn't give us license. Well, I've already been lusting after this girl for 5 minutes. I might as well go to bed with her because I've already sinned in front of God. It's not the same. She's not going to get pregnant if you just lust after her in your mind. You know, so the repercussions in the physical world are different than in the spiritual world. But what you're asking about is how far is too far. I think if people love each other, and you see most of this in hindsight, is that your relationship is destroyed if intimacy enters outside of marriage. Just on a completely practical, technological level, a relationship grows and improves as you get to know more about each other's personality, about each other's ability to respond in a situation, be flexible, forget. You might think you're with a wonderful guy and he's really patient, kind and everything, and then one trip through traffic on a really busy day when people cut him off, you might find out his personality is not so forgiving. You know, I believe in long, long, long engagements. I think most people who are married and realize they've made a kind of a big mistake in their life can look back and go, you know, I know if we'd dated one more year, I would have never gotten married to this person. And so part of this, the frustration that you feel as kids who are dating or you're in love with people is, again, it's the television backlash. You guys are bored. You want to marry somebody so all your problems are solved. You want to be settled. You want to go, okay, now my life is finally, I crossed the finish line. I'm home. I'm married. I got what I want. I'm loved. Somebody loves me. I've got support. You shouldn't be marrying somebody because you want support. You should be getting your support from God. If you're leaning on the person that you're in love with because they're just so strong, they just know so much, they're so wise and they're so calm and you really like that. But if you're leaning for any reason, you're leaning. And if one of you happens to move or get weak from the stress of supporting somebody else, the relationship can fall. You have to be standing up straight to really love somebody. I don't need my wife. I love her. I love her more because I don't need her. She doesn't fit into any illness in my personality, like, gosh, I really need a supportive person, like a mother figure, because I'm not good at adding up the bills. I need somebody to help me with my finances, pay all the bills so I don't get in trouble and they don't turn off my phone. I don't need a mother. In fact, I don't need my mother anymore. Hi, Mom. Gosh, I really like you. Gosh, you always do my clothes, and I come home and the food's cooked. I don't need my mother. So no, I really love my mother more. I'm more able to extend love and kindness to my mother because I'm not always asking her for something. And I don't need my wife doesn't need me. We were independent long enough with Christ, relying upon Him. We weren't leaning on anyone but God. So part of this boredom factor is going to push a lot of you into relationships outside of marriage or before marriage that break up, and then push you into marriages that God didn't really commend you to enter into in the first place, and you're going to lead really broken lives. And I don't think just because you make a mistake and marry somebody, you have to get divorced because it was wrong, you know, and we're bored, it's not working out, we don't get along. That's not a good enough reason. Now you're committed. When you get married, you're committed. The Bible says there's only one reason to get a divorce, and that's adultery. And if one of you commits adultery, you still don't have to get a divorce. If one of you bonds with another person and breaks the bond of marriage, that doesn't mean that divorce is the only result. Because you can just say, well, I know you're attracted to this guy, you're in love with this guy, but you know, if I love you, and if you can love me, and did I push you away? Was I too busy all the time? Or, you know, will you bond with me again? You don't need to get a divorce. The flip side of that is if you're married and you're bored, it's not working, you're arguing, you can't get a divorce. If you're a Christian, you're committed. It's not like a death sentence. It's not like, oh, you made the biggest mistake of your life and now you're trapped and you're going to pay for it for the rest of your life. It's not that way. See, God has made a commitment to you. He's not going to turn away because He's bored with how much sin and inflexibility is in our life. He's committed to us. He's going to love us no matter how adulterous we are, no matter how many more hours we spend watching TV than reading the Bible, no matter how much more in love we are with the cinema or going out with our friends than staying home and praying and expressing our love for Him. He's committed to us. And what He's probably looking at is a real weak relationship. But He doesn't turn away from us. When you're in a committed relationship, which is what marriage is, it's not a question of, well, she's gained a lot of weight since we got married, and she's not the woman I married. If you married the corporal body instead of the spirit, you deserve to figure that one out within the framework of marriage. And I would say in most situations when two people aren't getting along, it's your fault. Now, if she has problems with drugs, or she's really infatuated with a lot of men, maybe that's not your fault. I'm not talking about heavy-duty sins. But if you guys aren't getting along, if she seems kind of, you know, critical and she's nagging you and she seems kind of have less patience with you, it may not be that she's a kind of a termagant, a nag, complaining woman. It may be that you're not really giving her what she needs. Maybe you're not doing simple things like showing her respect. Taking out the garbage is a very small way of acknowledging that it's not an easy thing to cook. It's certainly not an easy thing to cook a balanced meal that's going to provide nutrition for your body so that a year from now you don't get rickets. It's not easy to cook. It's not easy to wash clothes. It's not easy to iron. Oh, it's easy to do all those things. You guys have done it. You know, if you've been married or if your mom, you know, went off on a vacation and you had to be alone for a week, and you've all done it. It's easy to wash some clothes and iron some clothes, but it's not easy to juggle them all just in time. So when the last dirty sock was in the hamper, the first clean sock is ready. And if you're not really being patient with your wife, it's proved to her that you don't really appreciate her. She's liable to just be less responsive toward you and be more short-tempered and critical. But if you're having a relationship in a problem, even with your boyfriend and girlfriend, examine yourself. The Bible says to confess your sins. You don't confess somebody else's sins. Boy, you really got a bad attitude lately, you know. You should really work on that. That's confessing somebody else's sins. One way to melt the heart of the one you love is to confess your sins. I'm really sorry that I yelled at you and it was about something so stupid. I am so sorry. I don't know. I'm such a creep. And then the other person's heart can melt and say, listen, I keep you waiting sometimes, and it doesn't bother me that much when you get angry. I mean, if you can forgive me, I'll forgive. You know, that's the way to build a relationship, not to confess someone else's sins for them.
Okay, we have a lot of questions still coming, but I don't feel that question's really been answered because the bottom line that I bet you 99 and 9/10% want to hear out, how far should you go in a relationship? I mean, I really feel that is a critical question of that because these people are still single.
And how far can you go without getting God really mad at you?
When does it become sin? It's bottom line, isn't it?
Well, I'll tell you, when does it become sin? Intimacy. I know I'm talking a little bit, but you know, he's got 6 kids, and I've just been married 2 years, so I'm still in the room.
And I'm single, so we all gotta. We're all. Isn't it interesting? I thought about it after. I put 2 married men up here, although how long? You haven't been married that long anyway, have you, Larry? And I thought that I better be the single person to keep the balance here. But I've also been married too, so I've gone through divorce, and I don't want any of you to have to go through divorce, because that's the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life. And I know more about relationships because I've been through it, and I went on a search to find out what were the right answers, because I don't want to blow it again. Let's go back to this question, okay, on how far do you go? I want to hear what you have to say, Garrett.
Well, I think I don't really want to sit up here and be like a heavy-duty expert on marriage and relationships and things like that. All I can do is, with you, is share how I did it in my life, and my testimony is that it has worked. So if it will help you in your life, great. And how far do you go? I believe the greatest test, and I say this not as a theoretical statement, but I say it out of practice, I believe the greatest test of love in the sexual realm is the ability to leave each other alone. If you love someone deep enough, you should be able to leave one another alone. And my wife and I, when I met my wife first time, I literally fell head over heels. The whole world everything you saw in the movies happened to me. And I loved her dearly. And I was very close to her and very intimate with her. And we knew very well that that would eventually end up in bed. And you can't, regardless of what the world gives us for preventives, the ultimate destiny is still going to be somebody's going to get pregnant. You can't believe that forever hanging on to little pills and little rhythm methods and little jars of foam, whatever else is on the market, is going to ever avoid that point where you're going to have children, because God designed that to happen. All right? So my wife and I made a decision which was not easy to take. It was easy to make, but not easy to take. And that was, we would leave each other alone when it got really hot. You see? In other words, we would know, you know when you're getting too hot. And we would simply walk away from it. And we said that to one another by saying that I would marry her as a virgin and she would marry me as a virgin. Now that may sound very archaic, that may sound very old-fashioned and stuffy in the 80s. But I believe part of the reason I can sit here and say that by the grace of God, I have a successful marriage. It's not because how great I am, it's because how great He is. But He also used me to make that kind of a decision that I can say, I love my wife enough to say, let's do it the way we were designed to do it.
There's been a lot of people that have joined us since we got started, and I just want to add to that because I know there are probably many that have already been in relationships, is that there's a time of spiritual fasting to create a spiritual purity, a spiritual virginity, and it's a spiritual sacrifice and worship unto the Lord of your sexuality, of abstinence. It's a fast, and I would really commend you to try it. It's great. And then when that one that God has for you comes along, you're ready. One other thing I want to add to that is Dr. Richard Dobbins said a statement. Dr. Richard Dobbins, not James Dobson. There's 2 different people. I was right. And I see what I did. I did it myself. I can disconnect it here. I'll fix it in a minute. He said to keep everything above the shoulders, because if you go below the shoulders, it's a fast trip downhill. maybe it wasn't, there we are, great. Now, let's see. Okay, there's a question over here, and I'm going back to that man over there, and then one over here, and we'll go real fast. I need my wire.
I just wanted to answer the woman's question over there with a little bit of my own testimony, because that's basically what I went through. I had been pregnant by someone, and I wasn't a Christian at the time. He wasn't a Christian. He wanted me to have an abortion. I said, no way, and he left. Fine, I can do it on my own. I'm a strong enough person, and I have enough love. And so I was going to do it all by myself, and then I met someone, and we fell very, very much in love. And if anyone had seen us, we were definitely in love. He loved my child. He was with me for a year. He wasn't divorced yet, but he was going to get one. And there was just something about us that we were a real family, and we lived together, and we made love, and we had that child together, and that was like his own child. Then we came to know the Lord. And his ex-wife had come to know the Lord after he had left her. And we were sitting there one night, and we decided, no, we can't sleep together. We can't live together anymore. If this is going to work, it's got to come from God. And so we got a different apartment together. We moved out. I mean, there was still an urgency there about us. We wanted to be with each other and everything, but if we would have kept on cuddling, if we would have kept on living together, or even got separate apartments, but kept that intimacy about each other, what happened would never have happened. He ended up going back to his wife because he felt that that was where God wanted him. He didn't want to go back. He didn't love her at that point, he thought, but he knew that God was telling him that he had to go back, and that could only have come because both of us did not stay together and did not keep the intimacy together. Now I find that I am even closer to God. I may be really lonely sometimes, and I may have these, every once in a while I get off on a track that if I don't find somebody soon, I'm going to go crazy. But that's okay. I'm getting closer to God, and I may not have been here today, and he may not have been back home with his wife and his family, which we both know is the right thing to do, and now their marriage, from what I've heard, is going well, and I just praise God for that, and I thank him for that. Even though times I've yelled at him, I think if we would have kept that cuddling, I may not be here today.
I just love this woman. But you know what? I've heard the story from the couple that are back together, and I've never met you. And I've often wondered about you. And I say people that are obedient to God, God bless you, because God's going to bless her for her obedience to the Lord. I'm telling you, this really does something, because I've heard their whole testimony. I've heard the whole thing in detail. I've got to know them. I've had lunch with them. And I am so glad, because this man also has 3 children that have their dad back. You see, and we've got to say, God, what do you want? Not what we want selfishly, but what do you want, God, in me? I want to be obedient. Obedience is better than sacrifice. That's exciting. Woo! This was really the person I was coming over, but I couldn't find him, so I sort of stopped up there, and that's God's way.
Yeah, I'm glad I got to hear that too. You know, I think the most important thing, you know, in a relationship is that both of the people are the first thing, even before their relationship, like as in this lady's testimony, is that their desire to be right with God. I think after that, then, something that really makes a relationship work is the communication between the 2 people. And what I was wondering is, like, just like your comments on what hinders the communication between 2 people, and what can be done to make that better and more so it can work.
Communicate. Oh, yeah. I think Garrett, you're the communication specialist. You want to give that one a try? We've got a problem on time, too. Your questions are incredible. And I'm going to have a discussion, and we're going to have to close this up.
Okay, let me
I'll just get over here and work.
Let me give the young man one little bit of wisdom, I suppose. God created you with 2 ears and 1 mouth, which means you should listen twice as much as you should talk. And I think one of the greatest destroyers of a relationship are those people who talk twice as much as they listen. And I think that if we can become better listeners in relationships, we do a great deal to improve the communication that we need to have.
From being a teenager and being unmarried, I'm just putting myself in your place right now, and I'm thinking a lot of talk, a lot of concepts, but they're not really talking about sex, you know. I want to know about sex. I don't want to know about platitudes and spirituality. I want to know about intercourse. I want to know about how far can I go in learning what sex is, what it's for, how to do it. How far can I go without getting God really mad at me? Because I know it's wrong. The whole thing is wrong. I mean, I probably shouldn't even kiss anybody if I don't really love them. But what can I do? Practice on my mom? So if they're gonna end this meeting, and my seminar is supposed to take place, I'd be willing to go a little more hardcore and talk about some stuff that's probably embarrassing for some people. So some of you can leave. I'm not going to get pornographic or anything, but I'm going to be real practical about it. Somebody asked me, and they didn't ask me now, but they said, what about nudity? What about nude beaches? Not that they're interested in going to them, but what does God think about nudity? Well, yeah, I'll talk about that and anything else if we can turn my seminar into a continuation of relationships. But the answers that you're hearing are not off the point. You're asking about sex. You're asking about orgasm and intercourse. And you're hearing about marriage and commitment and all of this. And you're going, but I don't want to know about that. Well, right, you don't understand what commitment is. Just as much as sexuality. You don't understand yet unless you are committed to your friends, committed to your parents. If you feed your dog every night instead of making your parents feed it, that's a kind of commitment. All of that. But these are the answers. But they're not all the answers. These are not the hardcore answers. But these are the answers. Your sexuality and what good sex will be, and really not just having sex because you're married and, well, I guess we had good sex. I mean, who knows? Who knows what good sex is? All of this is answered through good relationships. But I know you don't want to hear about the relationships and the commitment, so we can talk about other aspects of it. But these are the answers. Looking back, he's got 6 children, I've only got 1. But looking back, sex is different. It's always different. It keeps changing. It's not a commodity. It's not a thing. It's not a penetration. It's something weird. It's spiritual. Even the world knows this. Even non-believers know it's spiritual. They don't call it spiritual, but some of them say it's just the most beautiful thing there is. How can it be wrong? It's just so incredible. It's like heaven. Yeah, it's a touch of indefinable things, like heaven is. Sex is spiritual, but it doesn't need to be. I mean, for most people, it never really becomes what they glimpse that it contains. It never becomes a spiritual revelation of self and the other person and liberation and commitment. It never becomes that because they're so busy with the physical aspect of it, they don't ever really experience it. And I think Christians are the only ones who are really fully capable of understanding sex after having been married for years and years and years. I think we can understand it a lot more than anyone who's not a Christian can. But you don't need to hear about that or have that discussed, because if you're not 40 or 50 years old, it's just, you've got a long stretch ahead of you, and God is the one that reveals the meaning of sex. It has something to do with the meaning of Christianity. It has something to do with God's relationship to us. And the closest we ever come to it is through sex with our husband and wife, and also taking out the garbage. Commitment and love, and then the indefinable spaces in between what can be explained, the twilight zone, sex.
Well, I just want to say thank you. Our time is up completely. Your questions have been good, and I hope that you will continue to ask questions and get answers, maybe from some of us if you can catch us, maybe from your pastors. I think some of you need to go to your pastors with a lot of these questions and get them talking about it. They need to, because that's the only reason I'm here, is because they need to be talked about. want to say a special thanks to Garrett. Garrett First Rate is the general manager for Greenfest. And he's also the president of Christian Communications Center. He is a professional communicator, advertising, media, and creative marketing, as well as his ministry side is to bring teaching ministry to help people share their faith better.